Hi everyone and welcome to my presentation on equine cross country. I'll try to make all of this as brief as possible, but also try and give you a bit of an insight into what we might be doing on the day. So I'm not necessarily a equine photographer, I'm not a professional photographer, but I have been around horses for a very, very long time. So I started working for horses when I was 11 and I have worked at a number of different yards, and I have been a manager of a yard for I think it was 8 years, maybe a bit longer. And then I became self-employed and had loads of different clients, and I was just training their young horses, helping them with naughty horses and the problems they may have come across. I've also worked at a stud with young stock, so foals and mares and stallions, and we've taken them to shows, and so I am relatively experienced when it comes to horses. So hopefully I can help you with the different paces and different moments of you taking your photos. We will be talking a little bit about settings as we go along, but again, like I say, I'll try and keep it brief. On the day, we're going to have 3 riders come in and they're going to be jumping around the course for us. I've set it up so that we have one rider. She'll come in and jump some smaller fences, possibly go through the water, walk, trot and canter for us. And then we'll have 2 other riders come in whose horses are a little bit more experienced and capable, and they can jump some bigger fences and give us a bit more entertainment, which will be brilliant. So just onto the next slide now, and this is just a quick safety briefing. The lady that I have hired the course from has asked if I could do this, just to make sure that you're all aware that being around the horses is dangerous, and they do have their own minds. So again, like I said, safety is key when around horses, and these are a few points to consider. Horses are flight animals. Normally their instinct is to run away, but they can also be fight animals. So you've got to be extremely cautious when we're around them, and we keep a safe distance and be aware where the horses are at all times. A horse has 2 key blind spots directly in front of them and behind them, so we've just got to make sure that we steer clear of these spots. The horses have been chosen specifically for behaving themselves, and they've been out to competitions. They know what they're doing, and the riders know their horses very well. Always listen to our riders. If they say something to you or tell you to move, I really suggest that you do so, because there will be a reason for it. They have been briefed on keeping clear and away from everyone as much as they possibly can. Obviously, like I say, horses are flight animals. Sometimes you don't know what they're going to do. But as long as we're all aware that we stand where we stand and we keep an eye on the horses at all times, we will have set fences. We'll know where the horses will be. So it's not going to be like horses out of control all over the place. Noise should be kept to a minimum. We are on someone else's land, and it is her home. She's got her own horses there too. But also just around the horses that we're photographing. They're used to photographers and crowds. They have been out competing, so it should be fine. Backpacks and bags, this is a massive thing for me. Keep your bags on you or put them somewhere specific so that they're not in the way. I have recently had an incident where an iPad was put down on the ground and we were running a young horse for photos, and the horse decided to change direction and ran over the iPad. Thankfully the horse is fine, but the iPad does not work anymore and is in pieces. The terrain on course can be a little bit unlevel, so please be aware of this. In particular, down by the water jump, we'll have to go down a bit of a track for that. But for the most part, it's relatively flat filled with just a few ruts, so don't panic about this too much, but it will be on some unlevel. Sorry, I think I cut that last one before I finished my sentence, but I'm supposed to say unlevel ground. So just here quickly, we've got an example of the horse's vision, as I was talking about earlier. They've got a blind area in front of them and a blind area behind them, but for the most part, they've got relatively good eyesight. They can see you, so I wouldn't panic about this too much, but it's just always good to be aware of this sort of thing. So we're just going to quickly talk about the settings for equine photography. As I've already said, I'm not an expert equine photographer, but I do know horses and I know they move pretty quick. So a fast shutter speed is probably going to be a good idea. I don't necessarily have a set shutter speed when I'm taking photos of horses. I just play around on the day. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to practice. The riders will go over each fence a couple of times. Also with your cameras, if you're not used to the manual settings, you can always try and use a sports mode or any other modes that you've got on your camera. Panning can be very, very fun to play with. Just have a very slow shutter speed and follow the horse. We can play around with that. Burst and multi-shot mode is going to be very helpful, especially when you're getting used to the horse's movement and paces. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Again, with all photos and photography, lighting and your background, that's something to definitely think about. We can discuss more when we're on course. I've just linked a video, just a really brief video of dressage, show jumping, and cross country, where we can just have a look, and there's a few pointers on settings and stuff on there which are quite good, and he does actually slow his shutter speed down on one part of the video, so it's quite an interesting watch, especially before we go to Compurse. I'll try and fly through these as quickly as I possibly can. So equine paces. So this is stand/halt. So the best photo of a horse standing is when all 4 feet are square. So just below here, I've got 2 different photos. This one's one of mine, and the horse's hind leg actually is just slightly out of place. It should really be squared up like this other picture. This is another picture that I found online just to compare. But I actually do prefer the positioning of my photo. I think the horse looks more powerful and has more presence. Lighting obviously is different, so it's hard to compare. However, I just find when they stand with their legs squared up, as it were, they almost look like they're just stood on pins unless you're at an angle. So then we've got walk and trot. Walk is one of the hardest paces to get right with a horse. I quite like them, like with this picture. The front foot isn't quite touching the ground, so you know that there's movement, and the horse's head is just long and low, and it looks pretty relaxed here. And then this photo is just of trot, and we'll try and get one of the horses to give us a good trot, which we can try and photograph. Really, you want a photo like this, where the legs furthest away from you are almost like together, and the legs closest to you are spread wider. This shows extension, which is obviously a good look for the horses. The horses, basically, their trot is diagonal pairs. So the front closest to you and the hind furthest away from you will move together. And then the front furthest away from you and the hind closest to you will move together. So just got the canter and the gallop, 2 of my favourite paces. You can get some very nice shots. And these shots that I've got here are obviously quite different. The middle one's probably the only one that's a gallop photo, as I would call it. With canter and gallop, elevation is key, as with all paces for the horse. You want to show their power. Horses are rear-wheel drive, so you'll find they'll push with the hind legs to extend to the front, and they'll lift their front. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about this on the day, but yeah, it's quite a fun one to photograph. So just quickly, I found this story, which I think is always quite fun, to have a little bit of read what I've written here. So basically, this guy, Edward Mybridge, I can not say his name right, so please excuse me, but he was hired to take photographs of a racehorse galloping to prove that a horse's legs do not all lift off the ground at the same time. Now, the guy lost that bet because the horse's legs do actually come off the ground, and as you can see in the red circle or oval, you can see the horse's legs in 3 different sections are actually fully off the ground and not touching. So I thought that was something quite interesting to add. I really like the pictures and the different elements of the gallop. So now we move on to the phases of the jump. Again, I'll try and keep this as quick as we can. A horse has 5 phases when jumping. Some might say 3, some might say 4, but I think there's 5 that you have to think about, especially as a rider. And it's quite interesting as a photographer. You'll know the different elements because you'll know what you need to do at each one. So you've got phase 1 is the approach. This is where you need to be locking onto your horse and following it. Phase 2 is the takeoff. You definitely need to be pressing your shutter here. The takeoff is a key element to our equine photos. Phase 3, mid-air suspension, again, definitely where you need to be photographing. Landing, I do like to photograph, especially for the sales photography. Phase 5 is the getaway. This can also be your next approach to another fence. So in the next slide, I'll just show you the 3 main points that we'll be looking at. The approach and getaway are not necessarily areas you photograph. However, you can get some nice canter shots as a horse is coming in and out of fences. So just onto this section now, the takeoff. You can get good photos here showing a horse's power and elevation. Horses basically will bounce off of their hind legs, so they'll go back on the hind legs and push themselves like a spring up into the air over the fence. This is also where they're going to tuck their front legs up. With the sales photography, you really want to be showing a horse that's got its legs tucked up nicely. So then in the mid-air suspension, this is the shot that you really want to get. Most people will be happy with a shot that's like this one here. Horse's front legs are tucked up, the hind legs are going to come up as much as they can to clear the fence. Then you've got the landing. What goes up must come down, so I feel like it's quite an important element to have. Again, especially for the sales, you can see the hind legs are tucked up and they've cleared the fence. So I hope that's all made sense to you and given you a better idea of what we might be doing on the day. Obviously, we're going to be on a cross-country course, so it won't be the jumps necessarily that I've shown you here. They're more like show jumps. There'll be more rustic fences, like logs on the ground, barrels, ditches, water jumps. They're always really good fun. So just a quick debrief. I hope that you kind of understand what I've been talking about. On the day, I'll happily talk through it all again, but I just wanted to make sure we had a brief idea of what we're going to do, and you maybe be able to have a bit of a practice on your dogs, make them run out into the garden and practice on them. That's always a good tip. So safety, again, like I say, number 1 priority on the day. I don't want anyone getting hurt or run over by horses. When we're done, if you've got any photos you want to share, I'm going to be setting up a Facebook page, which the riders will also have access to, so they can see the photos that we've taken, and also we can have a discussion about some of the pictures too. Obviously, if the riders are going to be allowed to use your pictures, please feel free to put watermarks on if you really have to. But I just think it will be nice for the riders to be able to have those pictures from the session. And obviously for us to show what we've done from the day. I really look forward to seeing you all there. Cameras or phones are fine for this event. I'm more than happy if you only have a phone and you just bring that. Also, if your camera's old, don't panic. Mine is too. I think mine must be 13, 14 years old. It's definitely worse for wear. I don't have big fancy dancy lenses, so please do not worry if you don't have the best camera. Equally, if you do have the best camera, brilliant, bring it along. We are open to anything. So please note in this presentation, I haven't used just my own pictures. Most of them are my own, but just as a comparison for some of the pictures, I have taken some from Google. I just didn't want anyone to think that, like, the nice picture at the front, that's not one of mine. I wish it was, because it's lovely. But yeah, no, most of the pictures on here are my own. So thank you very much for watching. I'm really sorry if it's been a bit longer than I'd hoped. And I can't wait to see you all soon.